Welcome back. We're in Mooresville, North Carolina at Base Motorsports. This team became the first ever team in NASCAR Busch Grand National history to win 3 championships in a row. And even more remarkable is the fact that they did it with 2 different drivers. So that says a lot for team manager Steve Bird and his crew here at Base Motorsports. They won the championship in 1995 with Johnny Benson Jr., the last 2 years with Randy LaJoie. This week, Stephanie Boyd-Durner talked to Bill Bumgardner, the owner of the Fina Chevrolet team, and the driver, Randy LaJoie, about their championship.
If there was any doubt before, a second straight NASCAR Busch Series title is proof positive that Randy LaJoie is home. Just 2.5 years ago, LaJoie's whole future was in question when he and Bill Davis parted ways after only 13 Winston Cup races together. The situation hadn't been a good one, and LaJoie soon discovered that for him, the grass was definitely not greener on the other side. So he returned to Busch Grand National, and after only 2 seasons with Base Motorsports, now has 2 championships.
Yeah, and I found where I belong, and I found a great situation for myself. And, you know, when somebody gets in a job that they like, you know, they always seem to do better at it. And I'm in a great situation. I have a great team, great car owner. You know, my wife even told me she likes me because it's a whole lot less hectic. I mean, the Busch Series fits my schedule. I'm plenty busy. I'm as busy as I want to be. And I have time for my family and friends, and we have time for the crew. And, you know, this is what racing's all about. This is what I've dreamed racing is. And it's a Busch Series for me.
When LaJoie took over the Base Motorsports ride, he had some pretty big shoes to fill. Johnny Benson won the 1995 title for the team and was the 1994 Rookie of the Year. Add to that LaJoie's somewhat reckless reputation, and car owner Bill Bumgardner had some skeptics on his hands. People said, "Are you nuts? Why? Why'd you go out on a limb like that?"
Wasn't a limb. We've been totally vindicated in that decision. Randy had a lot of talent, energy, opportunity was what he needed. Randy needed a place. And y'all not going to say anything like nurture or anything like that, but Randy needed a place to let Randy be Randy and be supportive. And I just thought I saw a little twinkle of talent. But you're right. A lot of people said, you've lost your mind. You've gone from Mr. Conservative in Johnny to Wreck-'em Randy. You're nuts. Oh, well.
Proved him wrong.
Those same people ask me every day now, what would you do if Randy left?
What would you do if Randy left?
I don't think you can run Randy off.
One of the things LaJoie says he likes best about the Busch Series is the camaraderie shared between the drivers and teams. In fact, the guy he fought with all year for the title and the one who cleared the way for him to clinch at Rockingham is one of his best friends, Todd Bodine. What about your battle with Todd? I mean, you guys, obviously, you're good friends, but the 2 of you have been in the thick of it all year long.
Yeah, I knew at Daytona Beach when we crossed the start-finish line, I looked in the mirror and the Stanley Toolcar was behind us with Todd. I said, well, it's going to be a long year. And we haven't raced each other a whole bunch. I think in Miami it's going to be one of our best races, myself and Todd's, because he needs to go there and run well to keep second place in points. So he's going to pull out all his stops. I'm going to pull out all my stops. And I'm sure Steve Parks can pull out all his stops. So I think Miami's going to be a great race. At the end of that race, there might be 4 or 5 of us going for the lead, and I think it's going to be a great finish.
Of course, that race in Miami is the Busch Series season finale at the Homestead Motorsports Complex. A few days later, LaJoie will be honored for the 2nd straight year at the Busch Series banquet. But never ones to rest on their laurels, the Base team is already looking ahead. Between LaJoie and Benson, they have 3 straight titles, but this group makes it clear they want more.
I want to win 4. Nobody has ever won 4 back-to-back. No Winston Cup driver's ever won 4, has he? I don't think so. I don't think so. Well, we're going to go flush them out if they did and make them call in and tell us different, because we're going to try to win the 4th one.
We're still not the dominant force in the Busch Series. I mean, we still get outrun at Charlotte and Rockingham. I mean, we have to beat Mark Martin and Jeff Burton and Jimmy Spencer. I mean, when the Busch guys can step up to the plate and beat the Winston Cup guys, I mean, that's what's next for me, is don't let those Cup guys win in our division. I mean, that's a goal for me for next year. is when they come in, they're going to be racing behind me. And I think the race team, Base Motorsports, and FANA, everybody stepped up to the plate. That's what our goal is for next year, is don't let those Cup guys beat us.
Hi, this is Jeff Hammond, crew chief of the Parts America Chevrolet. Today, let's talk about fuel cells and what they mean to a race car driver, as well as what NASCAR is looking for as far as safety is concerned and how we have to take care of them. This is a 22-gallon cell encased in 22-gauge steel. This is what we call the bladder. This is where the fuel actually is contained. As you can see, it's already been approved by NASCAR, by this particular manufacturer. Inside the fuel cell, you'll find a special foam. The foam keeps the fuel from sloshing around and upsetting and handling the race car. But probably the neatest thing about these fuel cells are the check valves that we fuel them with. In case of an accident and the car gets upside down, the check valve has two steel balls that will go up and seal off, not allowing the fuel to run out. Every week, NASCAR pulls us into the garage area and make us take these tops off. They check the dates and make sure that the check valve is working properly and it meets our specifications. So it's a very stringent deal that NASCAR goes through to make sure that this is one area that we do not, cut any corners on.
This is the number 74 FANA Chevrolet that Randy LaJoie will drive in the last race of the season next weekend at Homestead, Florida. He doesn't have to worry about points down there because he's already got the 1997 championship locked up. But there's some drivers in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series who are worrying about points, and not necessarily to win the championship. There are some in the top 10 who are trying to stay there, and some out of the top 10 who are trying to get in the top 10. Because you see, if you're not in the top 10 in the point standings at the end of the season, you don't get to go up on stage at the NASCAR Winston Cup Awards Banquet in New York in December. Tyler Potter has the story about those trying to get in and those who are trying to stay in the top 10 in points.
While much is made of the championship chase, and rightfully so, there's a tight battle going on for 10th place in the point standings. With just 2 races left, 6 drivers are within shouting distance of 10th place Rusty Wallace. A scant 61 points separates 14th place Johnny Benson from Wallace. In between are Jeremy Mayfield, 16 points behind, Ken Schrader, 38 points back, and Ernie Irvin trailing by 58. 15th place Ricky Rudd was 62 back heading to Rockingham, but a crash with Jimmy Spencer sent him reeling to a 40th place finish, dropping him 128 back on the 10th spot. Wrecks have killed Rudd, who's only missed the top 10 twice in 18 years. Now he's on the outside looking in.
It'll be a little disappointment, but I look at it, how does the whole year really run? And it's been one of the greatest years in one respect I've had since my career started. It's been in the late 80s since I've won a couple of races in a year, and we won one of the biggest races of the year this year at Indy, and also winning at Dover. But in that respect, it's been great. On the other side, the point situation, there's explanations for it. We've had been in a lot of accidents. I think someone put the record together since Indianapolis. We've been in like 10 out of 12 races. We've been in wrecks. Either we didn't finish all together, or we just limped around to take the checker flag, and every one of them was just kind of a victim of circumstances. So really being in the wrong place at the wrong time, I've never had worse luck. That's the reason we're not in the points where we are now. I mean, that's why we're in the shape. A couple of weeks ago, we were sitting 9th, and now we're all the way back to about 14th or 15th.
While Rudd's taken the biggest tumble, Schrader's made the biggest jump, rising from 19th to 12th in a span of 13 races.
Well, just putting together some finishes. They haven't been the type finishes that we want, but they've been, just stringing together a bunch of top 15s, and, we got to make those top 5s, but at least the consistency of being in the top 15 is taking us back up to where we can see the top 10.
When you were sitting in 19th 12 weeks ago, did you think you'd be able to make this kind of a jump and get up here where you're in contention for?
Oh, I thought we could. You always got to think you can. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen to make it happen. I'm not really looking for 10th right now. 9th is just a little bit more ahead of it, and I see that's reachable there. So we're looking for 9th.
That would be Ted Musgrave, who, by the way, remained in 9th despite dropping 42 points to Wallace at Rockingham. Benson wasn't as fortunate, slipping 2 spots. Mayfield, on the other hand, gained 2, while Schrader lost 1 as Irvin gained 1. Just for Ernie to be where he is says a lot. Back in the summer, owner Robert Yates announced he would not return in '98.
Well, there's no doubt that our whole race team is, has been burdened with the whole split up and everything that's been going on. There's no doubt that you know, what they've been doing with the 28 and then also running Kenny Irwin the last part of the races. It's made it where we don't have as many cars. So it's made it a lot tougher. But, you know, I mean, you know, I'm a racer and I love racing. So when they throw the green flag, I'm ready to race. All these guys are on the 28 car the same way. They want to do everything they can to win races.
Benson and Mayfield haven't won races, but are solidly in contention for the top 10 because both were eager to improve on their 96 seasons. Benson was 21st, Mayfield was 26th after finishing 37th and 31st in his first 2 seasons.
It's all about having a good race team behind you and everybody working together, and that's what this team has done all year. And we've taken the good with the bad and the bad with the good, and we're able to you know, compensate on that. And it's just all about teamwork. You got to be consistent week in and week out. You got to have good cars and where things don't fall off and you don't have trouble. And that's what we've done. And we just got to continue to do that to be able to build for a better race team next year.
With just Phoenix and Atlanta left, the question becomes, do you race aggressively to win and run the risk of a poor finish, or do you race for points with the hopes of securing that 10th position?
Right now, I want to win another race real bad, and so I'm just going to hammer down, go to the front, go as hard as I can right now. I've won at all these racetracks we're getting ready to go to, except for Phoenix, and had been on a pole there and had really great runs. So the next 3 races are all good tracks for me.
Not only is it prestigious to finish in the top 10, but by doing so, you're assured a spot on stage at the Waldorf Astoria in New York for NASCAR's postseason awards banquet.
You hear a lot of drivers say they can finish in top 10 in points. That would be great, you know. And it could be drivers that have been here the second year like myself, or somebody who's been here 10 years that maybe hasn't had that opportunity to get in the top 10. And, you know, I just think the top 10, it seems like everybody, the big pressure is finish top 10 in the points, you know, and you know, it is. And it's a big pressure to get there, but that's what we're all after.
No one in this group will win the championship, but to these 6 drivers, making the top 10 will be, all things considered, the next best thing.
Well, it's too bad all of them can't finish in the top 10, but we know they can't. And we also know that it'll go right down to the wire in the last race of the season, the Napa 500 at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. When should race drivers retire? I have no idea. Steve Wade has some ideas on it when we come back, so don't go away.
It's been frustrating. You know, we've had some success at the pole at Atlanta, you know, 4th at the Glen, had some decent races in Winston Cup, but you know, we were kind of doomed from the beginning with Sabco. It just seemed like the ball never bounced the right way.
No question, I'd rather get the agony over instantly, and one day kind of does it. You know, you're there, and the penalty is either good or bad, and you're on to the next race. I think that as the series grows, it's mandatory that you have maybe more than one day, but I personally prefer just one day.
You know, whenever you're at a place, really nice track like California, I like doing it in 2 days. You know, it gives you time to think about doing a little bit different setup for the race, and gives you can kind of concentrate more on qualifying on one day and then racing on the next. So I like to spread out.
Well, I'm a short track racer, race 5 nights a week. I'd rather come here, do it all one day, pack up, go to the next track tomorrow, and do it again. So I like to see them just do a one-day show, and then we can get in, get out of here, and go to the next place. And that's kind of the way I've always been. So I mean, I don't think the guys in the crew like that, but drivers do.
Besides the Fina Chevrolets, which are driven by Randy LaJoie, Base Motorsports also fields the Kleenex Chevrolets, which are driven by Tim Fedowa in the NASCAR Busch Series, and they're in the process of putting the finishing touches on a brand new building adjacent to this one that this team will move into in the next 30 days or so. How long should race drivers continue to race? There's no age limit on it as far as I know. They can race as long as they want to, or at least as long as they feel like it. Steve Wade has some thoughts on when drivers should retire.
Hi, I'm Steve Wade. There have been some discussions about NASCAR Winston Cup driver retirements recently, fueled by speculation over what Darrell Waltrip might do in 1998. Now, you remember that at the start of this year, all indications were Darrell might hang up his helmet after this season. Well, since then, Darrell has indicated he intends to be back for another try in 1998. Now, some folks feel it's time for Darrell to get out of his car. He hasn't been very productive in recent years, and there's a large group of fans who never saw him in his championship days. So they see him only as a guy who has trouble qualifying and pretty much runs around in the rear of the pack. Well, Darrell is just like every other Winston Cup driver. He's going to retire when he feels the time is right. He's not looking at his record. He's looking at himself. That's the way it is with virtually every driver. Now look at Richard Petty. He didn't win a race from 1984 until he retired after the 1992 season. For those years, he was a shell of what he had been, which was a 7-time Winston Cup champion. But Richard wanted to race. The desire to drive hadn't left him. The urge to compete hadn't died. If Richard had looked at numbers only, he would have retired long before 1992. It's the same for Darrell and other drivers who've been driving for years with unspectacular records. Dave Marcus, Morgan Shepherd, Dick Trickle, and drivers like them fit this mold. A driver retires only when he no longer finds racing fun and exciting. When it gets to be work and frustration, that's when he seriously considers ending his career. Sure, there are exceptions. Injury forces some drivers to get out when they still feel the need to compete. Other drivers find themselves in a position to move on to something else when they are still on top of their game. Our own Ned Jarrett is a great example of that. And still other drivers find themselves retired because they can't lure a competitive ride. But it's almost certain that every driver keeps right on racing until there comes a time when the thrill is gone. You have to envy them in a way. Even though they may not be productive on the track, they go right on experiencing the rush racing gives them. Heck, for most of us, there's not a whole lot that's thrilling about our job. And we can't even think about retirement until we get enough money in the bank. So if Darrell comes back full bore in 1998, well, we shouldn't expect to see him racking up the victories, although he still feels he's got a win or two left in him. Just accept him as a driver who still feels the need. And when that's gone, that's when Darrell, or any other driver, will tell us he's retiring.
Still to come on this edition of Inside NASCAR, the mailbox coming up right after this break. A little later on, we'll have Robbie Gordon and also Mark Martin setting the record in the Busch Grand National Series with his win at Rockingham. We'll be right back. The Inside NASCAR mailbox is brought to you by Miller Lite. Our question today is from Richard Cranenberg from East Northport, Long Island, New York. Do they use a conventionally driven fan or do they use an electrically driven fan to cool the engine?
I'm Larry McReynolds, crew chief for the Goodwrench Chevrolet. Richard, that's a good question. Most racetracks, we do run an electric fan to cool the motor, much like on your passenger car. There's a few racetracks, like Martinsville and the road courses, where we run a lot of brake blowers, that we go ahead and run a steel mechanical fan because the electrical system just won't take all those electrical-driven fans. Thanks for writing in, Richard.
If you have a question for the Inside NASCAR mailbox, write to us at Inside NASCAR. Post Office Box 240417, Charlotte, North Carolina 28224. If we use your question on the air, you'll receive this embroidered Miller Lite jacket, plus a cap and shirt from Chase Authentics, the authentic trackside apparel of NASCAR. Enter to win the Chase Authentics Fan Fantasy Sweepstakes. Win a trip for two to one of NASCAR's biggest races of 1998. Entry forms and complete rules in the men's department of participating Sears stores.
What's this? Are convertibles coming back? They have one here at Base Motorsports. We'll tell you when we come back and also talk with Robbie Gordon, so don't go away.
You know, we were pushing pretty hard to go on and break the record. Now I can go into the next race and not feel like we almost have to. You know, I think it's going to be fun, you know, going and feeling no pressure.
Among the fleet of cars here at Base Motorsports, we found this convertible. Basically, they just sawed the top off of it. They tested it this week at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Randy LaJoie drove the car, and it was done for Humpy Wheeler, who's the president of the Charlotte Motor Speedway, and he's looking at some kind of a division that can be a support division somewhere in the future. And that's the reason for this convertible car here. Well, Robbie Gordon has driven cars without tops on them, perhaps has more experience there than he does with the stock cars. 1997 was not the kind of year that he hoped for in NASCAR Winston Cup racing. Phil Wurz talked to Robbie recently about his career.
For Robbie Gordon, 1997 has been a year to forget. A disappointing season for a driver who has won in virtually every class of racing he's entered. From off-road to sports cars to Indy cars, Robbie Gordon has been a winner. That's what makes 97 so hard for him to accept.
Definitely the most disappointing season for myself. You know, before we normally had at least good to moderate success, and this year it's been frustrating. You know, we've had some success at the pole at Atlanta, you know, fourth at the Glen, had some decent races in Winston Cup, but you know, we were kind of doomed from the beginning with Sabco. It just seemed like the ball never bounced the right way.
Gordon entered 97, taking over for Kyle Petty in the Coors Light ride for Felix Sabates. Gordon says expectations were high initially until two more drivers came onto the scene to form Team Sabco.
When it comes to the commitment, you know, I expected a lot, and I had high expectations of a team when I went there. And, you know, I think that when I went there, Felix told me we were going to do a one-car team. Before you know it, we're doing a three-car team. And my big saying is, you know, yeah, Sabco can do a three-car team. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But there's only so many Tony Glovers. There's only so many Robbie Gordons. There's only so many Keith Simmons. You split those guys' effort apart, and you have three mediocre teams. If you put all those guys together in one environment, you have one very competitive race team. And that's what I really wanted.
And with Tony Glover as Gordon's crew chief to start the season, there were some bright spots. Gordon set a new track qualifying record in the Coors Light Monte Carlo for the Prime Star 500 in Atlanta. He finished 14th. Then at Watkins Glen, Gordon piloted the 40 car to a career-best fourth-place finish on the road course. But off the track, the relationship between Gordon and team owner Felix Sabates became more and more strained. At mid-season, Joe Nemechek and Gordon's crews exchanged team members as Tony Glover's attention turned to the Bell South Chevy. Sabates was outspoken about Gordon, leading to speculation that Gordon's days with Team Sabco were numbered. Gordon dabbled in other racing series. He ran the Indy 500 for Sabates, but finished 29th when the Coors Light car caught fire, and Gordon suffered extensive burns to his leg and hand. Later, Gordon asked for and received permission to run in the Kart Series finale at Fontana. Gordon finished 8th in a Carl Hogan-owned Mercedes, but would never return to Winston Cup. Sabates released Gordon and hired Sterling Marlin to drive the Coors Light Monte Carlo for 98. Sabates painted a picture of Gordon as impatient, immature, and hard to work for. For whatever reason, known or unknown, Gordon is keeping a lower profile about what happened between the two.
I'm not going to say I'm better than that, but you know, I'm going to hold my feelings inside, and I'm going to learn from my experiences, and hopefully next time when I end up doing something like that, or going Winston Cup racing, or drive for any other team, I'll dot my I's and cross my T's a lot better. I don't think it was bad luck. I think it was just the wrong chemistry. I think that we went in there with two different ideas, and you know, both of our ideas were good. I think Felix's intentions were good for what Felix had planned, and my intentions were good for what Robbie had planned. They just didn't work out together. You know, I think that looking back at it, I'm glad I did Winston Cup.
And Gordon certainly hasn't ruled out a return to Winston Cup. He's talked with Richard Petty about filling the vacant seat in 98 in the 43 SDP Pontiac. And Gordon says he's talked with Andy Petrie about a second Cup team, but so far, no solid prospects.
You know, we're just going to look around and try to find out what's the best opportunity for Robbie Gordon in 98. You know, I think the most important thing right now is do a little character rebuilding of the Robbie Gordon name and what it meant before. You know, before it was always get in the car and drive it hard and hopefully finish close to the front of the field. And running in 98 is going to be the commitment from the team. I think it's going to be how committed the team is to each individual series. You know, if it's Winston Cup, how serious is the team really about winning races, or do they just want to be there? Same with IndyCar. You know, how committed and what kind of technical programs they have behind them that will make my job a little easier to get to victory lane.
Do you remember who won the very first race at Phoenix International Raceway? Well, let's take a look back to November 6, 1988 in the inaugural Checker 500. Early on that day, Rusty Wallace in the Kodiak number 27, Ricky Rudd in the 26, and Dale Earnhardt were all strong. But as the race began to wind down, the Xerox Ford driven by Alan Kulwicki should have been the car everyone was watching. He led the final 16 laps to take his very first Winston Cup victory. Just 4 short years later, Kulwicki would become the 1992 Winston Cup champion. How'd he do it? Well, let's refresh your memory about November 15th, 1992 at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Davey Allison needed a 5th place finish to win the title, and that's right where he was running when Ernie Irvin lost control of the Kodak Chevy on lap 254. Allison was done. He'd finished 27th in the race and a distant 3rd in the points. With Allison out, Bill Elliott and Kulwicki drove their hearts out. Kulwicki's team figured out that if their driver led 1 more lap than Elliott, then they would take the championship. In the end, Kawicki stayed out front a total of 103 laps to Elliott's 102. And by just 10 points, Alan Kawicki took the championship, while Elliott went on to win the race 8 seconds ahead of Kawicki.
He's had a fantastic year, and I mean, I congratulate him and all the guys. For a hard-fought year, it's what we've done. He deserves it.
I've been the underdog a lot of my career, and hopefully that'll be an inspiration to thousands of short track races across the country that are maybe aspiring to do this, and Busch Grand National drivers, and maybe it'll help some of the people that are dreaming about doing this to believe in themselves, and you know, if I can do it, maybe they can too.
Alan Kawicki, gone but by no means forgotten, 9 years after his very first Winston Cup win.
The NASCAR Winston Cup drivers and teams have next weekend off before their final race of the year, the Napa 500 at the Atlanta Motor Speedway the following weekend. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series will wrap up their season next weekend at Las Vegas, Nevada, and the NASCAR Busch Grand National Series will wind up their season at Homestead, Florida. Now, we won't wind up our season. In fact, I don't think we have a season. We go 52 weeks a year. So let's take a look at what we have for you here on Inside NASCAR next week, right here on TNN.
Gordon, Burton, Labonte. Are they tough young drivers? You bet. But they're also the future of NASCAR Winston Cup racing. We'll take a look at racing's new breed and find out how they plan to leave their mark on the sport. And we'll introduce you to NASCAR official Buster Otten. After the loss of pace car driver Elmo Langley last year, Buster stepped in to fill the seat. He's also one of the many key people needed to pull off a successful Winston Cup season. All that and more are ready to roll next week on Inside NASCAR.
When Mark Martin won the AC Delco 200 at Rockingham, North Carolina last week, he became the all-time record holder of wins in the NASCAR Busch Grand National Series, surpassing the total of Jack Ingram. And that is the subject of this week's Inside NASCAR Profile.
Last week at Rockingham, Mark Martin became the all-time Busch Series leader in wins, surpassing the legendary Jack Ingram. Martin had been tied with Ingram at 31 victories since winning at Talladega back in April. Mark had his chances at the record-breaking win over the last 6 months, despite running just a handful of Busch races. At Michigan, he was leading with 12 to go till he had to pit for fuel. And who can forget the race at Charlotte, where Mark and Jimmy Spencer raced about as hard as you can race in the closing laps, with Spencer emerging victorious by just .291 seconds. In Saturday's AC Delco 200, Martin took the lead for good when he passed Ricky Craven on lap 185. He led the final 13 laps en route to his 32nd Busch win. So after 10 years and 156 Busch starts, Martin's finally #1.
It's a tremendous accomplishment. The only thing that slightly puts it in perspective for me is when I think of Jack Ingram and what I thought of him when I came into this sport, came into NASCAR. That slightly puts it in perspective, but it's all kind of a blur to me. I mean, everything that I've done behind me is fogged out and blurred and gone, and the only thing that I can see in front of me is the next one. But we've had a good career in NASCAR and Busch, Winston Cup, and we hope every day that continues, and that's all I can do.
Ingram's record had stood for the past decade. The last of his 31 victories came at Hickory back in 1987. But inevitably, he knew his record would be broken.
All my friends says, you know, Mark Martin breaking your record, and they have something to talk to me about when we go in the coffee shops or restaurants or what have you. And I think it's neat that people make records. Somebody come along and can break them, and they talk about them. I frankly like it, but the format of people being able to do something like that.
Only time will tell if Martin's record will someday be broken. If and when it happens, there's no doubt Martin will be just as humble as Ingram was. And that speaks volumes for both of them.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for this show. We hope you enjoyed it. Our thanks to team manager Steve Bird and all the folks here at Base Motorsports for allowing us to visit their facility. You join us again here on TNN for more on the Inside NASCAR.
Inside NASCAR has been brought to you by Miller Lite, who reminds you that anything can happen at Miller time. Simpson World, a racer and race fan superstore featuring the complete line of Simpson safety products, plus the latest fan merchandise and collectibles. Now open in Mooresville, North Carolina, Torrance, California, and Indianapolis, Indiana. Ground transportation provided by Glavelle, the official van conversion company of NASCAR. Glavelle, the choice of NASCAR tracks, teams, and drivers. Call 800-445-2825 for a dealer near you. Communications provided by Racing Radios, the two-way radio provider of the NASCAR Winston Cup Series, the Busch Grand National Series, and the Craftsman Truck Series.